Okay, all right, let's go ahead and get started. And actually, I think our battery's dead right there.
Working, but I don't think we need
Um, but I think everyone can hear me. So, all right, well, I want to welcome everyone. And today we want to shed some light on what we're doing with respect to housing in the city of Albuquerque. And we have some new programs we're going to share with you, but also catch people up. Over the last month, we've gotten a lot of inquiries about the housing challenges in the city. And there are a wide range of inquiries. Some of them are about, their home prices going up or they're having trouble moving. Others are more about, income related, how much supportive housing do we have, and that kind of challenges that face any major city. And so for us, we're going to try and collect all of this into an update on a number of fronts, as well as with some of the ARPA funding that is related to housing. So first, I do want to thank the folks at this facility. This facility was originally city land. The city donated, and then we helped finance the construction. And our partner, our sort of lead partner, was Catholic Charities. And so this is technically sort of one of their operations, and they have a management company who helps run it on a day-to-day basis. It does a very good job. So this is a good example of the kind of public-private partnerships that we do for supportive housing all around the city. Obviously one of our newer facilities, and it seems like it's in great shape. And the neighbors out front actually told me that. So I want to thank Generations for sharing their space. That's what this is referred to, this area. And we also want to mention that in general, we know that housing insecurity deeply affects families here and across the nation. Housing is something that, if you're involved in these issues nationally, is a much bigger deal in cities, especially in the East Coast, and also cities that are rapidly growing. So Denver, Austin have had major housing challenges. You don't see the same issues here in Albuquerque, but we still have the problems and the challenges. They're just not nearly as amplified as they are in those cities where housing is one of the number one issues in several of those cities around the country. Not quite here, but still certainly very important, which is why we wanted to share with you an update on this today. Now, the pandemic, of course, has made this problem worse. So as we see the connection between housing and homelessness in our unsheltered community, we also see a rise all across the country coming out of the pandemic. And the verdict is still sort of out on why this is happening, other than everyone believes there are some obvious answers, which is that people aren't able to work like they used to, or they have to stay home because kids weren't in school, and there's all these ripple effects that have happened, or they're having health issues, and so these are affecting their ability to afford the housing that they once could. But we also know that our entire population in the American West is in flux. And we saw this with the retail data, realtor data that has been coming out that shows that people are moving here more than they have been in the last decade, and vice versa. You see like Idaho, for example, becoming a net mover city, and you see a huge exodus from California. So we know in the American West too, in general, our families, our communities, they are just in flux out of the pandemic. People are resetting what their life is going to be like going forward. And a big part of that is where they're going to live, even if it's an apartment or even if it's a house. So we believe that every family here deserves a safe and secure place to call home. And we have essentially a four-pronged approach to this that we're continuing as a city. There's affordable housing, and that makes sure that people have a place that is essentially the rents are in some way subsidized or monitored so that it's affordable. That's a huge component that we're going to talk about. Then there's supportive housing vouchers, and that's really about getting folks, they need shelter where they can get stabilized but also get services into the particular facility where they are. So that's sort of a higher needs situation, and again, something the city is doing. We also need market rate housing. So this speaks to the general notion of, is there a housing shortage? Well, there is in certain areas of town, and that includes market rate housing. Downtown is a good example where there's long not been enough market rate housing. In other parts of town, it's the reverse. There's more affordable and so forth in a certain area, or there's not enough affordable in a certain area or supportive housing. And lastly, we want to also work on rehab, and I think this is something that is greatly going to be bolstered by some additional funding that we've gotten But we all know that we have a lot of houses, and the theory is the cheapest, fastest way is just to fix them up, and then they can be a good place to call home. And that's exactly what we're doing with our home rehabilitation grants. These are going to be referred to as our neighborhood opportunity grants, and this is about using some stimulus funding to pay for essentially home repairs that have been desperately needed, and some that, especially in some situations, aren't even, the house might not even be a safe place to live. And so we're now going to be starting that program. So our Deputy Director of Housing and Homelessness is going to walk us through all this. But before I hand it over to Deputy Director Lisa Huval, I just want to mention that if you combine the initiatives that we've done in these 4 areas over the last 4 years, and the leverage, because a lot of these funds are then multiplied by HUD funding or state funding, we've put in $550 million in investment into Albuquerque housing over the last 4 years. So Albuquerque is actually way up in terms of our investment in these areas, but it's trying to keep pace with needs, and there are still more needs than investments that we've made. So that's why we're pushing forward. So with more on this, our Deputy Director for Housing and Homelessness, Lisa Huval.
Good afternoon, everybody. So first, I'd like to start by sharing more detail about supportive housing. Supportive housing is a model for helping people experiencing homelessness exit into permanent housing permanently. Supportive housing helps tenants pay their rent, usually in the form of a housing voucher, and also provides the supportive services needed to help tenants keep their housing. Supportive housing tenants rent an apartment from a private landlord in the rental market. They pay 30% of household income towards the rent, and then the housing voucher pays the rest. And then a case manager works with the household to help them really stabilize and be good tenants and connect to the resources and supports that they need. Under Mayor Keller, the city has expanded its investment in this proven solution to homelessness. City funding for supportive housing programs has increased by 73% since FY18. And city general funds account for 62% of all supportive housing funding from the city, with the rest coming from federal funding. I am proud to say that this fiscal year, we will provide supportive housing to approximately 1,000 formerly homeless households. And I'm proud to say we partner with 16 different nonprofit organizations to administer these programs. These organizations provide the rental assistance and the supportive services that folks need to be good tenants and maintain their housing in the long term. While our supportive housing vouchers help tenants rent apartments that are already available in the community that already exist, we know that we also need to create additional units that are affordable to low and moderate income Albuquerque residents. And that is why, as the mayor said, we invest in new construction and the acquisition rehab of high quality rental housing using our local workforce housing trust fund dollars and HUD funding. Since 2018, projects funded by the city of Albuquerque have generated or created 385 apartments, high quality, decent rental housing, 346 of which are affordable to low and moderate income Albuquerque residents. In addition, and let me just say this project we're at right now, Generations at West Mesa, is one of those projects that was created in the last couple years. In addition, we have 5 projects that are currently in development. These projects will create at least 287 new rental units, of which at least 255 will be affordable to low and moderate income folks. And the city has invested $17 million in those projects. Plus, as the mayor mentioned, they've leveraged other funding sources that are available. These new projects, which will be located on the west side, on East Central, and in the North Valley, will all be close to jobs and transportation. 2 of these projects, Luminaria and Ciba La Loop, will serve senior citizens who have low and moderate incomes who need a safe place to call home. Others, such as Calle Corta and Highland Plaza, will serve hardworking Albuquerque families. Finally, I want to talk a little bit more about our new home rehab program that will be coming online. Creating new units of affordable housing is important, but so is helping low and moderate income homeowners stay in their homes. We know right now that many homeowners are struggling to take care of their homes, often leading to really unsafe or substandard conditions. The city has allocated $3.3 million in federal stimulus COVID-related funds for home rehab. These will be used to help homeowners take care of both minor and major home repairs. Everything from replacing a water heater to replacing a roof. That will help these homeowners stay in their homes. We will be issuing a request for proposals later this fall to find a nonprofit partner or partners to administer these programs. And we look forward to updating you later this year with more information as we roll out this important new program for our community. Thank you.
Okay, now this, all our housing efforts cross a couple of different departments, and a lot of the work we do, both affordable but also market rate and mixed housing, flows through our Metropolitan Redevelopment Department. So for more on that, Karen Iverson.
Thank you, Mayor. There have been a number of factors that have happened recently in Albuquerque that cumulatively have led to this pressure on our housing market. The recent economic announcements creating thousands of jobs, high construction costs as a result of supply chain shortages through COVID, and low interest rates have all resulted in a really strong demand for housing in Albuquerque. And that's generally good news. And we are addressing the need for more housing across the spectrum, including by just trying to help increase the supply of housing, the number of housing units in Albuquerque. MRA has partnered on 590 housing units that have been built since 2018. And our annual report that's available online right now details 500 more housing units that are in the pipeline. And those range from a 220-unit, 6-story building along Central across the street from Presbyterian to 14 affordable townhomes that are going to be built by HomeWise in downtown. But affordability is not just about housing, it's also about transportation costs. And MRA, the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency, is focused on redevelopment in downtown and along Central Avenue because the proximity of those areas to jobs and to transit lines really makes them prime to accommodate higher density housing. And that higher density housing, while it's ideal, while it's what we want to accommodate housing, oftentimes has higher costs associated with it, environmental costs or uncertainty with the old utilities that are in place. And so the MRA is working to help developers address those costs by providing tax abatements, we provide discounted land, or we provide loans and grants. This week at the Albuquerque Development Commission, they have a proposal in front of them that we hope that they will recommend to the city to move forward with the Downtowner, a 200-unit project at First and Silver that is being proposed by Jay Remby, and we're super excited about that. COVID has also changed the way that we use space and how we're going to be using space downtown. And we're also looking at how we can help retrofit outdated office space in downtown Albuquerque to help address the need for more housing. Thank you.
Okay, so I think with that, just a reminder, for folks who don't fit into these categories, there is still lots of rental assistance funding available. And so with the different changes in the eviction situation and so forth, just want to remind everyone at renthelpnm.org that there are still millions available in rental assistance. So please take advantage of that if some of the things that we mentioned before are not readily available to you. And we want to make sure that every one of our neighbors has the opportunity to find a home. Now, with that, obviously we have not touched on the Gateway Center. We're happy to. We kind of put that more on the unsheltered homeless end of the spectrum. Today we wanted to focus specifically on built environment housing. But we can take some questions, and I think there are some on other topics, so we'll pause and do those. So questions on housing.
What do you say to anyone who's concerned about having a shelter, a gateway project near their home?
Well, a lot of these projects, remember the supportive housing, affordable housing, are throughout the city. And I think we have a long-standing tradition, even this facility where we're at now, of demonstrating being good neighbors. We rarely have complaints about any of the city housing projects and their impact on the neighborhood. The Gateway Center is obviously a unique situation, and what we're putting together is, in fact, one of those agreements with the community. And I think we've had great discussions over the summer, and I think we've found a way to accommodate a lot of their concerns. And also those businesses and neighbors around there, I think, are also recognizing the need for it. The point of the Gateway Center is to reduce the number of people on our streets all over the city, including the areas around it. Sure.
What are the guidelines for qualifications, people who qualify for these affordable housing programs?
That's an excellent question. A lot of it has to do with median income and the percentage of their income based on that. But Lisa probably would be the best one to answer that.
Yeah, so for our supportive housing programs, folks do need to be experiencing homelessness, living on the shelter, in shelter, or on the streets in order to qualify. For our affordable housing developments, households need to be at or below 80% of the area median income in order to qualify for that housing, for the affordable units.
And how can they access these resources?
Yeah, very good question. So for the supportive housing vouchers, the majority of vouchers are accessed through what we call our coordinated entry system. The best way to find out information about the coordinated entry system is through the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness. We contract with them to operate that system. For the affordable housing developments, we do have a list of all of the developments that have been funded by the city on the city's website. I apologize, I don't have the exact link with me, but we can get that to you. So folks can go there, they can check out all of the properties that the city has funded, and then they can reach out to those properties to find out more about how to apply.
Any other on housing?
Okay, well, we'll pause for a second, and I guess Lisa and Karen, you guys, if you want to head out, you can, or whatever. We can take some other questions.
Brianna? Yeah, I did. So what do you think about the work done by New Mexico State Police? Nearly 100 felony arrests. What type of difference does that make?
This time around, the Albuquerque Police Department and the State Police, I think, did this much, much better. We wanted their assistance, but we also said it has to be in a way that is helpful specifically to our city and our department. And the chiefs worked together, and I think it worked out quite well. They helped us with these warrant arrests, which we were behind on, and also traffic enforcement on the interstate. So that has been a huge issue. It's a big time and resource drain for APD, and it's supposed to be the state anyway, so getting back to that was really helpful.
Perfect, thank you. And then the other question I have is the governor's office announced they plan on keeping those officers out here a week after the state fair. You guys asked if they stay on. How long would you like the added help?
We've been in communication with them on this plan, and we do think it's going to be helpful to have them stay after, especially because the state fair does take a lot of resources both from APD and the state police, so you get a little behind on things like even warrants and so forth. So we think it's a good thing, and we'll see going forward until our next cadet class graduates, which is in the fall. I think we'd welcome the help as long as it's in step with Albuquerque Police Department.
Nancy?
Yesterday, big announcement with the DOJ. What can you say about that? Do you feel like you walked away with any progress?
We appreciate the Attorney General listening to our city's concerns, and I think there is an opportunity to do this in a better way. I believe that we've got to have a monitoring relationship that is specifically helpful to pushing reform and helping us fight crime in Albuquerque, not just, a measure from somewhere else, from some other community. And I think that's really what this is about. It's about localizing this effort so that we can do a better job fighting crime and doing real reform.
I want to double check and see if these numbers are accurate. There are around 46 internal affairs and use of force investigators, officers. Any end in sight? Did they indicate to you that there's any end in sight with the DOJ? And are those numbers correct? Because a lot of police officers are saying they just
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is some good news because all of this is because of the monitor and the judge. In other words, these impositions are forced upon our department. They're not the chief's decisions. They're not my decisions. And so opening up this door so we can have a discussion with DOJ about how best to allocate resources is essential. And what you'll see at the hearings coming up in October that are scheduled is us working together with partners, putting in requests to have that modified so that we have more help in the field.
And how, have you talked to Dr. Ginger, or you?
Oh, and the numbers, check with Gilbert on the numbers, sorry. Yeah, they sound right, but I wouldn't know exactly.
So, Mayor, just because I hear it all the time about these police officers who are leaving because they some are major infractions, some are minor
Mm-hmm.
infractions. What do you say to them? And the citizens who know that we're losing a lot of police officers, what's the bottom line here?
I think this is encouraging news because we need a Department of Justice and a U.S. Attorney General who is going to give us the tools that we need to fight crime and do reform. And we have been hurt by the current regulations. And so for us, we want reform to be about use of deadly force. That's what it's for. And I think unfortunately, under a lot of the last mandates, we have been forced to spend way too much time on small issues, you know, whether it's the burrito in the car or the seatbelt and these kinds of things. And that's where I think the whole effort has gone astray. But it takes a judge to fix that. And that's why the Attorney General's comments today is going to be really helpful, and this hearing in October is going to be helpful. Thanks.
Anyone else? All right, thanks, guys.
All right.